The Jets have fired defensive coordinator Steve Wilks. They have started to dish out some medium term, moderate extensions. And the tank is in full effect. We got Hendon Hooker on the practice squad. We have a full slate of football, college football playoffs where you got a good look at Ty Simpson last night, Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza today. Those two actually, well, Simpson and Mendoza will be playing each other most likely, potentially a more there could be multiple combinations of those guys playing each other, right? So we're going to get a good look at those quarterbacks. Steve Wilks, the way I always look at these things with coaches or moving on from players, it's not a perfect science, but I think if you try to envision if you were a fan of a different team, right? If you were a fan of, I don't know, the Arizona Cardinals, right? And let's say the Arizona Cardinals fire Gannon and they're starting over and they hire some offensive minded coach and they hire Steve Wilks as the defensive coordinator. Would that be an inspiring hire to you at this point? He keeps getting jobs, but he keeps getting fired. And he doesn't even make it a full season with the Jets. And that may be a wrap for him. I think that he is the defensive Nate Hackett, where it's like, hey, I mean, the guy's done the job 5 or so times. He was a head coach at some point. Highly respected players and people say good things about him, but you just watch and it's like he ain't it. He ain't it. And Nate Hackett will never call plays in the NFL again. And I think Steve Wilks might see the same future. Maybe he'll be a position coach. Right. Now, I wish it was just him. The problems on the defense. I mean, if you look at particularly now with Sauce and Quinnen traded, and obviously guys that they brought in like Andre Cisco and Brownlee to be starters. AZ Thomas was your backup. So now you're down to, your third string corner, what it was at the beginning of the year. And even Isaiah Oliver, who was a primary backup, is now on IR. So it's personnel is pretty brutal. I think ironically the personnel on defense is further away. Offensively, I'm not saying they're a quarterback away, but they obviously don't have a quarterback, and that is a highly limiting factor that if they did, and along with maybe like 2 more pass catchers and they can maintain the offensive line, it's pretty reasonable to paint an easy path to the offense becoming competent. Defensively, it looks pretty tough. Now we'll see what Harris has. I don't know what he can do in 3 games to really give himself a shot at the position, because if we're being honest, like, maybe he can do well against the Saints and they can force a turnover, but the Bills and the Pats are going to beat the brakes off the Jets in a way that I don't know. What can you do? What can you do from a defensive coordinator standpoint with 3 games when 2 of them, you're going to be completely outmanned? With Steve Wilks, if you watch the post-game show on SNY, it's something that Bart Scott talks about every week. He talks about the lack of disguise. The Jets are dead last in the NFL in disguise percentage, according to Next Gen Stat. They showed it on Monday Night Football. They showed the whole league on Monday Night Football because I think it was the Dolphins. They were showing how they disguise kind of a lot. And they showed the whole league, and the Jets were 32nd in how often they disguise their looks. They are 31st in havoc rate, which is, your sacks, your pressures, your quarterback hits, your passes defended, your forces fumbled, your interceptions, right? And then they're brutal on third down and in the red zone, and their blitz to pressure ratio is one of the worst in the NFL. They blitz often and they don't get home, and they bring the same blitzes, right? They don't mix up their blitzes. They don't mix up their coverages. So if you're not going to do that, then you're just not getting anything from as a schematic advantage from Wilks, right? It's almost like you just like ask Madden what the play call is. Oh, cover 1. Oh, cover 2. Oh, cover 3. But it's always Adams who's the buzzer on cover 3. It's always the linebacker that's in on the B gap to the strong side that's blitzing. Always. Sometimes it's a slot corner. You know exactly what's coming. And the announcer on the Jaguars game said that running play action on first down against the Jets is like stealing. It's like stealing, right? And I think that was really eye-opening to see how the Dolphins game beforehand where they ran the same stuff that they beat the crap out of the Jets in the first half when they played in September, and they came out and just ran the same stuff. And it's like Trevor Lawrence, the very first play from scrimmage, they'll play action boot, free 8 yards to the tight end. So any competent offensive mind that has played the Jets this year has done the same thing. And the Jets have been completely feeble to stop it. So if you're not getting any, like, what's the schematic juice from Wilks? You can't even, there's nothing. There's no, so it's maybe someone else comes in and it's still bad because of the personnel, but it definitely warranted a change. I think the biggest disappointment of the defense, because these like random Madden generated defensive backs they're playing, like whatever Jordan Clark at nickelback. I mean, Tony Adams, we know what he is. Malachi Moore is okay, but he's still a day 3 rookie. Quantez Stigers having to play boundary corner when he's only in the NFL because he's a gunner. That's going to be what it is. But I think the biggest disappointments are the 2 linebackers, one of which was a first-team All-Pro a year and a half ago. He was playing like arguably the best linebacker in the AFC in Quincy Williams, and in that game, he was a liability. I think he gave up 4 touchdowns, which is that a record for a linebacker to have 4 touchdowns on his head in one game? And then Jamie Sherwood, who now when they paid Sherwood, I think all of us were a little sticker shocked. Like, yeah, you bring him back. He's 25 years old, whatever. He was voted team MVP, and he was a good player last year. But that was a contract where you were anticipating another level up for him to match that contract, right? Because he wasn't the 5th best linebacker in football last year. But you're like, all right, can he level up another 15%? He's an ascending player. And now it's maybe the worst contract at the position in the NFL. Jamie Sherwood as the 5th highest paid linebacker. So that's something where, like, okay, if Sherwood's going to be here next year, like you have to have a different coordinator, because obviously that wasn't working. And he was okay with Saleh. I know he wasn't, and he had a market. The Jets weren't the only team that was going to pay him a lot of money. And those teams had access to all his film from last year, and it wasn't like this. Right? If this year was his contract year, Jamie Sherwood would be getting like a 1-year, $4 or $5 million deal. So he's looked like a completely different player, and we'll see. Coaching matters, man. It's hard to say because you're like, well, what is Steve Wilks supposed to do when, look, you see Quincy Williams in coverage, he's literally getting beat one-on-one. He can't go out there and cover for the guy. And that's 100% true. I don't think Quincy will be on the team next year. I don't think he wants to ever step foot in New Jersey again, if we're being honest. He might go to Dallas with his brother. That's why the Jets should have taken the 5th round pick they could have got for him, because you knew he wasn't going to be on the team next year. To be honest, I think the Jets, once you traded Sauce and Quinnen and you're 0-7, looking back, like, they probably should have just sold the farm. Like, they allegedly had a 2nd round pick plus change for Jermaine Johnson. And allegedly it was from an AFC East opponent, obviously Pats or Bills. So the Jets wanted more. And of course the Pats and Bills are good. So it's going to be a later 2nd round pick plus like a 5th or whatever it was. Dude, you take that. I mean, come on. How many players can we have these emotional attachments to that never amount to anything? Jermaine Johnson has 0 hits, 0 pressure, 0 hits, 0 sacks, and 3 pressures or less in 4 straight games. He hasn't really been good against the run this year. And the reality is with Jermaine, it's sad to say, he tore his Achilles. In the history of the NFL at that position, you tear your Achilles, it's done for you. It's done for you of being the version of the player that you once were. It just is. We saw it with Carl Lawson, who was who was 1 year older than Jermaine when he tore his ACL, and he had another year in the league where he had 7 or so sacks. But then there was residual injuries, and you're not the same. We saw it in our division with Jalen Phillips, who was about to pop as a really, really dynamic edge rusher. And yeah, he's a role player in Philly, and he's a couple years removed now. But you just ain't that dude again. That's the rule of popping your Achilles in a position where you put 270 pounds in the ground and you explode off of your Achilles tendons. Modern medicine obviously is better, but at that position, man, the Jets are betting on him being an outlier, and he's going to be on the team for 15 million next year. It's sad because I think with Jermaine, the player at the end of 2023, that player he was about to become, which is like an eight or so sack player, 55 pressures, really good against the run, chasing down screens. That player is worth $20 million a year in this league. But in this year, fine, was it going to be a wash because of the Achilles? That's not even my point. My point is it's a career-altering injury. And I think if the Jets could have gotten a second-round pick and taken his $15 million off the books, like we can say no, but we would have said no to trading Quinnen and Sauce. And once they did it, we all understood it was a fine business decision for the return that they got. So, I mean, they could have just peeled all those guys off, thrown in Brady Cook, and had the 1-1 pick. I think if you could go back, you'd do that, because if we're being honest, now it is negative. It's definitely negative, but it is kind of true that the Jets are probably going to end up winning like the worst amount of games this year, right? It is like the four games they're going to win or whatever, 3 games. It is almost the worst. Like going 3-14 and not even picking in the top 3. Like they're going to pick 4th or maybe 3rd in a 2. What's shaping up to be a 2 QB first round. That is kind of the worst case scenario, because you don't really feel, even if you went 1-16, do you really feel that much worse than 3-14? Not really. I mean, because they're gonna lose to the Pats and the Bills by a combined 50 points. So all the culturing that happened by beating the Falcons will be swiftly undone and forgotten about when we are unceremoniously packed up by the Bills and Pats. So it is kind of the worst to be a bottom tier team, but still not maybe get a top 2 pick in a QB class that may have 2 guys who are warranted taking in the top half of the first round. It's a bummer. Yeah. Nobody wants to hear that. So I haven't done a stream in a minute. Actually, I've just been super busy. I've been crazy busy. But yeah, I'm not I got to be honest, guys. I'm not feeling too great about the state of this team moving forward. It just takes a lot of cope. Like if we're just being objective, it's like, man, like are these guys really going to turn this thing around? I don't know, man. All we can do is hope. But I will say this about Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn. 2 things that I like about both of them. Number 1, I think Aaron Glenn at least has a spine. Like at least he has a backbone. And you can see that, like, that's why we can't freak out anymore about him publicly saying things that we know not to be true. Like Justin Fields, why do people not care that Lamar Jackson holds the ball and Josh Allen holds the ball, but Justin Fields does? And everyone's like, well, it's because Justin Fields sucks. It's like, yeah, he knows that, man. That's why he benched him 2 seconds later. Justin Fields is never going to take a snap for the Jets again. Steve Wilks, so it comes out and kind of defends Steve Wilks or whatever, and then he fires him. So we've clearly seen the pattern that he is not going to publicly critique guys really, but he's going to do he has done accountability. He has done that. He has put guys on the bench. Hey, you're not playing up to your standards, so you're going to sit on the bench. Well, now you're playing somebody else who's worse than Quincy and who's worse than Jermaine for a quarter. Is that how your team's going to win? Or you're benching Simpson because he committed a bunch of penalties and now somebody worse is playing? I understand that, but what else? That's one of the few things you can do to these players. What can you do? I mean, you can't fine them for sucking. You're going to make them run suicide sprints like they're on the 8th grade modified basketball team. One of the few things you could do is pull them off the field for a bit. And then that reality check of like, oh, I'm not untouchable. Oh, right? That's one of the few buttons you can press. He's pressed it a few times this year. The one time we did it with Quincy came back and had like the best game of his season. And when he did it with Simpson, he came back and then he went like 2.5 games without a penalty. When he committed 3 penalties and a half and he put him on the bench, came back in, it was like 2.5, 3 games not without a penalty from him. So, okay, I like that. He's not afraid to make changes. It would have been easier on Glenn to hold off on the Wilks firing for as long as possible and then say, "Hey, it was all Wilks. That's why the defense sucked," to kind of really give himself that 1 year pass. But now, if the defense still is really, really bad the next 3 games, it is more of a reflection on the head coach. And he doesn't care about that. He just cares, hey, it was time to make a move. I made the move. So I like that Aaron Glenn has a spine. I do like that he seems to be about what he preaches. I think if he could redo it, he would have recalibrated the messaging at the beginning of the year, because telling us that you're going to be, you're here to win now, but not necessarily when is now. Like, who knows what now is? I mean, time and space is all relative. Like, come on, bro. You win now means now. It means like now, like this season. That's what that means. And and I think like the ultra defensiveness in the beginning and the new sheriff in town kind of stuff, that it was like he created extra criticism on himself that would have been less bad if he did not do that. If he did not do that. And he kind of stopped doing it. So I think if he could have that back, he'd probably maybe take a little bit of a chill pill. But I like that he has a spine. I like that he does seem to walk the walk on some of the things, like he says, on accountability and all that, whatever. And about Darren Muji, about the roster perspective, is they admitted what time it was. Like, they were like, okay, maybe we're going to try and be a scrappy, team this year that can win 7 or so games. We'll see. And once they realized that that was not happening, they didn't do the full sell off, but they at least answered the phone, right? They at least answered the phone and they're like, okay, it is what it is. We're 0-7. Teams are offering us multiple premium picks for a guy who doesn't want to be here, and a corner who's really good, but not his former first team All Pro self. And now that Colts trade is looking awesome, because that's probably going to be like the 15th overall pick plus another pick next year that could be like top 20. And AD Mitchell, who I think is a starting NFL receiver. Is he a wide receiver too? You shouldn't go into next year assuming it, but he's at least a third receiver. He's a starting NFL receiver in AD Mitchell. So that's looking pretty good. They did extend both Ruckert, 2 years, $5 million per, which, to be honest, I thought that was I thought it was a little bit more money than I thought. I've never thought about how much is Jeremy Ruckert gonna cost in a in a contract that thought really hasn't crossed my mind, so I guess I didn't really have an expectation. But when I saw him getting 5 million a year, I was like, "Oh, okay, like, good for Ruckert." And he has improved. Now, people will ask, what has Aaron Glenn improved on the Jets team? And I get it, their offense and their defense are probably worse than last year, I would say, by almost any metric. But 2 things that I think have been improved are special teams, right, with Banjo, and the blocking, offensive blocking, both the offensive line and the tight ends. The Jets tight end blocking, I see Dylan Terman in the chat. I remember me and Dylan doing a podcast. This was back when I was still watching like the all 22 of every freaking game. I haven't rewatched the all 22 man since like Halloween. That's usually when I'm tapped out. you know, I know some guys like probably like the Badlands crew. Well, they charge money for their shit, so that's on them, man. They gotta stay up and watch the all 22 of Jets Dolphins. This is a free show, so I ain't doing it, man. But I remember rewatching that, and dude, like, I think the guy's name was Bates, the blocking tight end they brought in. The Jets single-handedly lost that game in London, and it was a bad game. Alan Lazard, 4 drops. I think Rodgers threw 3 picks, like a terrible game. But they lost that game because of Brendan Bates. It was the worst blocking film by a human being that has ever graced the world. If you go on Twitter when you have a moment and try and just type in Brendan Bates and see if you could find somebody who put a reel of it up. It was horrendous. And Rucker couldn't block last year, and neither could Conklin. So the Jets tight end blocking was a underrated weakness of why they were really bad and underperforming last year. And I think that has been pretty good. Like Mason Taylor has been a guy who gets in the way, right? There's good blocking tight ends, there's bad blocking, there's tight ends who can't block at all, and there's guys who get in the way, and Mason Taylor gets in the way. Jeremy Ruckert has had actually some pretty he's had a key blocks and a lot of explosive runs this year in Ruckert. So offensive blocking has been much improved. So that Coach Hayden, good job. Tight ends coach, I don't even remember off the top of my head, but Coach Hayden was a tight ends coach before, so maybe that's just his influence overall. So that's cool for Ruckert. I mean, a tight end too, like I don't know who has a great tight end too. I still think I would like him to be the third tight end in an ideal world. Um, but okay, cool. They like him. They're bringing him back. They brought back Myers on a deal that says we like you, but we are still looking to upgrade at that position at center. And then it comes down to guard. I think they're gonna pick either AVT or Simpson. So the Jets will have, before they enter the draft, they will have a viable starting five offensive line on paper that doesn't require a ton of projection, which is nice. Which is nice. The offensive line's finally been decent this year, which it's tough to be bad when you have a decent line. That was my one thing this year where I'm like, man, I really don't think the Jets are going to be like a bottom 3 team. I didn't think they'd be this bad because I really thought the offensive line would bolster them a floor. Fields is way worse than I thought. He played the worst football of his career as a Jet. And then the Brady Cook of it all. Now you don't have Garrett Wilson, Mason Taylor, Sauce Gardner, Quinton Williams, and you have like 5 defensive backs who are hurt. So didn't anticipate that happening, but you were 0-7 before all that. So unfortunate, but the offensive line is pretty good. It's pretty good. You know, Armand Membu, it's a really remarkable rookie season for a 21-year-old offensive tackle on a bad team. On a team that has quarterbacks that exacerbate, you know, the circumstances of the offensive line is pretty impressive. The one thing I will say about with Fields not playing though, Fields, credit where it's due, the Jets' run game has taken a hit without him because, and this is why every team that has had Justin Fields as a quarterback, they haven't scored a lot of points or won a lot of games, but their rushing offense has always been good, and their running backs have always had efficient numbers because the threat of the keeper, right? That bi-directional threat improves their running game. So them running out of the gun with that, their rushing efficiency was much better than it's been just with a standard rushing attack with Cook and Taylor. So that part of it is gone. Brady Cook. You know, I think Brady Cook has shown you why it wasn't worth freaking out about the Jets not drafting a quarterback in the 6th or 7th round last year, because if you put, you know, again, maybe I'm not talking about Suge or Dart or the guys that went kind of high. But you know, whatever, the Kyle McCord, Will Howard, that's what they would look like. That's what they would be, the same thing. The kid who's going to start for Miami over Zach Wilson, which is kind of hilarious. That's what they would look like. So you're not missing out on anything. You could pretend that Brady Cook was a 7th round pick if we want to. I thought it would be worse, the Brady Cook offense. And I know it was bad. He threw the worst interception I've ever seen, but I got to be honest, on one of the interceptions in the Arian Smith fan club, all 6 of us, we might have to, it's getting late early. We might have to pack it up. My God. Arian Smith is so bad. There was a lot of evidence that this is kind of how it was going to go, but I was really hoping that the Jets could just take a mid-round receiver who could play a little bit. Just a little bit, man. Arian Smith is so bad. It's not, he hasn't really had a brutal drop that I could think of this year, but he's so uncompetitive at the catch point. He cannot play through any contact at all. Like that, his effort on that one interception by Cook was egregious. And some of his effort as a blocker, he was scrappy as a blocker. um, in at Georgia. So and he was inactive for a game because of something that sounded like discipline. Glenn didn't say, but he was clearly in the doghouse for a game, and it's like, dude, it's like with Corley last year, who was just too cool for school as a mid-round pick that has to earn his way in the league, and it's like, dude, you gotta block. You gotta fight back for the ball so it's an incompletion and not an interception. Like, you're a 4th round pick who people thought were overdrafted. You could be not in the league next year, dude. If you don't put something on tape, it's frustrating. That's been a frustrating one because that would have been a really good sign. Because the Jets have been able to, in Armand Membu and Mason Taylor, Joe Douglas could have picked those guys. That wasn't the problem. Um, which, by the way, we have to retire now that we're coming on 2026. This is like a complete ramble of a stream because I haven't been on in a minute. So lots of topics, but we got to retire the previous regime. No more. We're not allowed to talk about what Joe Douglas did wrong. Yeah, he was fired. He's been fired for a long time, for over a year. Robert Saleh has not coached the Jets for what has it been now? How many games? 22, 23 games he hasn't been the coach for. So there's no more Robert Saleh's culture. Anyone who is still Robert Salehing around on the Jets, that's on them, or the new coaches who haven't fixed it, or maybe they got to go next year. You know what I mean? Like, dude, like, I mean, well, this is a Robert. There's still Robert Saleh culture lingering. Well, really, it's probably a Woody Johnson culture because the culture was still ass when whoever else was coaching the past 15 years. So we got to retire that. Like, this is on the new people now. Either fix it, or if they're people who have Robert Saleh-itis, then they got to go. And it's just, you got to turn the page. What the hell else? What was I even talking about? Oh yeah, Arian Smith not being good, and Joe Douglas being able to he could have take hit in the first or second round. But if the Jets could take a 4th round receiver who went out there and had like 400 yards and 2 touchdowns, we'd be like, holy, like, oh my god, it would be like a revelation. Because when's the last time the Jets have taken a mid round receiver who's been good? I mean, maybe Jeremy Curley, who was at least an NFL receiver. I think he was a 5th round pick. I think it's been since him. I mean, Cotchery, when was Cotchery taken? But he was before Curley. He was in the 4th round. So it's been a minute at that position in particular. And it's not even that they just miss, like, oh, this guy disappointed. Their busts at wide receiver outside of Garrett Wilson have been guys who just like washed directly out of the league. It's crazy. It's craziness. Arian Smith is the Denzel Mims of Elijah Moore's, really, because I see him as more of like the Ardarius Stewart of Devin Smiths. All right. Okay. Now, what else the heck are we talking about? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. If you want to hit the thumbs up button or subscribe, that'd be cool because I do put my commercials on low. I put my commercials on the least frequent setting because even the medium one that they suggest is like you get a now I have YouTube Premium, so I don't even notice, but um apparently if you don't have that, it gives you a commercial like every 5 seconds. So I put it on low. So YouTube will give me, you know, $6 less or whatever. So if you can make up my $6 sacrifice by hitting the thumbs up button and subscribing, that'd be cool. So quarterbacks. Ty Simpson, a little bit of a steadying game for him, I really do think that it's hard. I think it's so hard to comprehend that Alabama has a very bad supporting cast for their quarterback by Alabama standards this year because typically you're like, oh, you can't a quarterback from Alabama like Mac Jones, like how easy his life was. You like two first round picks on the offensive line and a Heisman final. Did Devontae Smith win the Heisman? Did he win it that year? Maybe he did, or he was a finalist. He was unbelievable. But Alabama, I mean, you look at the front seven of Oklahoma was all over Simpson the whole game. They have no rushing offense, and I counted like 5 drops last night in that game. And Simpson is solid. Like I think maybe if he has a strong finish, maybe he could be in the range where a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers could be thinking about taking him at pick 20, or whatever. I still right now, I probably wouldn't have him in the conversation to be at the top of the draft for the Jets for sure. Seemed like he went from QB1 to day 3 pick to now maybe like day 2. We'll see how he finishes. It was a solid performance from him, and even like the 2027 class will be interesting. I know we always say the next year's class is better, and sometimes it doesn't work out, but it's shaping up to be a lot of intriguing options, especially if Moore goes back. Like if Dante Moore goes back, the Jets are probably just going to have to wait until 2027. There's only so much you can do. If the Raiders are going to have the first pick and they take Mendoza, they're not going to trade out, and Dante Moore goes back to school. Like what can you do? And that kid from Duke, who Dom C likes, is going back. Sellers is hitting the portal, but there's going to be some interesting names because um, Julian Sayin, you're going to have Arch Manning, you're going to have Sellers. If Dante Moore goes back, you'd have him as a first round player. And there's a guy like John Mateer who, when his hand has been healthy, he looks like a guy that maybe you might take on day 2. And obviously, when his hand was not healthy, he looked like a UDFA. But Mateer's got some gas in his arm, and he's I think like a Walmart Jalen Hurts is kind of as I see him because he seems like he could take those short yardage and goal line runs. Like he's built to kind of take that. I think that could transfer to the next level. Now he's not the kind of athlete that's going to go get you a 3rd and 14 with his legs, so there's limitations there. But when his hand is right, like John Mateer has as live of an arm as any quarterback that's in college football this year. And then we'll see what Simpson, like maybe, I don't know if Simpson gets dog walked by Indiana, does he go back? I know he's going to be 24 years old, so maybe he just has to take his shot, but we'll see. There's shaping up to be a lot of options, at least for next year. But if Moore and Mendoza come out and there's 2 options, I still think the Jets should strongly consider, coming up to try and get one and be on the phone and see what it costs. I don't think that you just completely punt on the year. You can't trade up for this guy. Well, yeah, because here's the thing about that. It's the easiest thing in the world to say, because if you pick any individual prospect, no matter who it is, unless it's Andrew Luck or Joe Burrow who come around once a decade, the smart money is to say that insert player X is not worth trading up for. You'll be right most of the time, especially non-quarterbacks. I don't like trading up for non-quarterbacks at all. But look at how you get QBs. Like let's look at proven starters, like proven to be good starters around the league who were drafted the last decade. I'll even use the term good just kind of liberally just to cast a wide net here. So traded up for within round 1. These are teams that traded up within the first round to draft these players. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Sam Darnold, CJ Stroud. Okay, those are all traded up for within round 1. Now, here are quarterbacks who were not traded up for, but taken with a top 6 pick in the draft. Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert, Baker Mayfield. Now, here's drafted in round 1. Outside of the top 5, no trade up. Bo Nix. That's it right now, unless I'm forgetting one. Now drafted on day 2, Jalen Hurts. That's it. Now drafted on day 3, Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy. I mean, even if you want to include, if you want to, do we want to include Bryce Young? He's going to be a starter. They pick up his option. He's going to be a 5-year starter in this league. He was traded up for. Are we going to include Kyler Murray, who's been a 5-year starter, who's going to be a day 1 starter next year, who was a number 1 overall pick? So you're looking at teams like, 70% plus of the teams that have like a proven to be good starter, in the modern NFL, they either sucked bad enough to have a top 6 pick or they traded up. So again, at some point, I think logically you have to be team tank or team paying the price of not tanking, because the whole time we were beating the Browns and whatever, and it's like we all know in the back of our mind, like, if you're going to wish you didn't do that, but nobody likes the guy who complains about winning and losing. Nobody likes that guy. We all know that guy on Twitter. They lose. He comes on and says, "Oh my God, how could you lose this game? It's so embarrassing." And then they win. And it's like, "Oh my gosh, this team is," like, nobody likes that guy. But at the same time, like, when the Jets are winning, it's like, no, who cares? You don't need a number 1 overall pick. The Jets have all this draft capital. They can trade up. And it's like, okay, now it's time. Do you want to trade up? Absolutely not. Never trade up. Okay, well then should they have just lost those like games on purpose and have it? No, you never tank. Well, the odds say you most likely to get one, you have to do one of those 2 things. Now, maybe you don't have to trade up all the way into the top 2, like Lamar and Allen and Mahomes. They were like picked at 7, 10, 31. So it's not quite as expensive. Maybe I get it. Jordan Love traded up end of round 1, not as expensive. But I think we might be being naive if we are assuming, if you saw the Jets trade Quinn Williams and Sauce Gardner, you witness that happen. You see them have 8 picks in the first rounds the next 2 years, and then you witness Nick Folk make a kick from 1,000,000 yards in the rain to beat the Atlanta Falcons, and you know that top 2 pick is gone. When you saw those things happen, some of those picks were gone. Like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, some of those picks are gone. I don't know which ones. This year, next year, Manning, saying Moore, Mendoza, I don't know, but some of those picks are gone. 8 picks, they're not all being made. Some of them are going towards a quarterback. That's just in my mind, that's what I think. Because if you're looking at to next year, and Aaron Glenn they're going to sign whatever Marcus Mariota this year if they pass on a QB, which whatever, fine. And they go out there and they win 6 or 7 games, because look at their opponents next year. Look at their opponents and show me the wins with Marcus Mariota. It's not happening unless you have a coaching staff that to be a staff that can drastically overperform with what they have, like Kyle Shanahan or Mike Tomlin, who just sets a floor of like, we're never going to be bad. We don't have that. Maybe they'll develop into that. Right now, we do not have that. So if you're a Marcus Mariota or whatever quarterback team, look at their opponents next year. It's not going to be pretty. It is what it even. So now you're heading into year 3, and maybe between the first 2 years, you have 9 wins combined, and they're looking at the top 5 of that draft, and they're seeing the quarterback goes 1, and then maybe a quarterback goes 2, and they have 3 first-round picks. They're just going to sit there with their 3 first-round picks and take a safety and a linebacker and a nose tackle and run and whatever. If he falls to us, cool. But if not, we're fine with Marcus Mariota again for year 3. That's not realistic. Like, as a fan, maybe you could think that, because what do you care if it happens in 3 years or 4 years and 5 years? If you could save those picks, I understand the logic behind that, but they're not operating on that timeline. Some of those 8 picks are going to go towards a QB, most likely. So I don't think it's unreasonable that they would go towards Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore. I think those are 2 quarterbacks that it is reasonable that they could become top third of the league starters for a decade for you. And players you should consider going up and getting. I'm excited to watch more of Dante Moore, because I've watched almost all of Mendoza's games this year, not as much with Moore. I'm excited to watch him. Goal for the rest of the year, get an interception. That'd be nice. What's up, Dean? Just we won't support Mendoza. So ideally, here's the ideal. Ideally, you would the way that the and it's no surprise that these are the three teams. I know two of them are having off years and Mahomes is hurt, but the three teams that have pretty much been the best three teams in the AFC the last 5 years or so, right? The Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills. Those have been the teams, preseason betting odds to come out of the conference come out. You could pencil them in as three out of the top 4 or 5 teams. Playoffs every year, all that. They got Lamar Allen and Mahomes after making the playoffs with an older Joe Flacco. Well, it's crazy to say an older Joe Flacco at the time, but he's still like playing in the league, whatever it is, 8 years later. An older Joe Flacco, Tyrod Taylor. So it's just small world, and Alex Smith, right? I believe all those teams made the playoffs, or at least they weren't bad. They were at least 500 teams the year before they traded up for those quarterbacks. So that's ideal because then you're putting them in a situation where you're like, hey, we had a journeyman level QB who made the playoffs. So that in and of itself is a fair amount of proof of concept that the quarterback has a chance. Right? You can if you can win 9 games with Tyrod Taylor, if you could be in the playoffs and have a pretty like efficient offense they did when it was like Alex Smith and Kareem Hunt and the beginning of Hill and Kelsey. Yeah, you're like, this quarterback's going to have a good shot. And both Lamar and Mahomes got to sit for the majority of their rookie years. So that's the blueprint. That's the ideal way. You'd want to do it that way if all things being equal. However, it's not the only way. And I think that one of the most important things is that you get the actual guy who can play. All right. So if you think there's a guy who can play this year, I think you should still be aggressive about it because if you look at Drake May, the Patriots were terrible when they took Drake May. And you could have made the argument that they're going to ruin him. And it looked pretty bad. Like year one, it's like he should have been playing. The offensive line was terrible. And obviously they changed coaching staffs, but they improved the team. They improved the team while they developed their quarterback. And you can totally do that, right? The Jets didn't ruin Sam Darnold because they took him to a bad team. The Jets ruined Sam Darnold because 3 years later, the team was just as bad. And let's be honest, I've seen people say, "Oh, well, it's just like what happened with Sam and what happened with Zach." First of all, remove Zach Wilson from your mind. He is not an NFL player. It's like Trey Lance. Like there's bust. There's bust because the NFL quarterback is such a scarce thing. They're overdrafted. That's why all the good ones go high because even bad ones go high. They rarely slip through the cracks like Dak Prescott. What 10 years ago now? Brock Purdy, dude, I could probably average like 7 yards per pass in a Kyle Shanahan offense. I think I could until one of those guys touched me. I couldn't, well, no, I would need like, if you gave me a Nerf ball, if you gave me like a squishy Nerf ball and they were not allowed to hit me, I could average 7 yards per pass in a Kyle Shanahan offense. Okay. So whatever, remove Brock Purdy from your mind. And Dak Prescott was 10 and Kirk Cousins with Russell Wilson. These guys were over a decade ago. Like all the good ones go. That's why some bad ones go in there too, because teams are desperate. So Zach Wilson is being Wally pipped by Quinn Ewers. He was behind Jared Stidham by Sean Payton. He just wasn't it. It's a bust. It happens. It just didn't do any favors. He's a bust. So remove him from your mind. Sam Darnold. Okay, who was the? Let's actually do. Let's take our time and do this right. I really want you to go Go down this memory lane with me. And I'm not going to say how the Jets should have kept Sam Darnold or whatever. That's not the point of this exercise. It is what it is. Sam Darnold would have never been good here. The Jets should have just not have been the Jets when they took him, and he could be a competent starter. But whatever, that's not the point. So Sam Darnold's let's look at his rookie year, 2018. Okay, let's look at the 2018 Jets offensive supporting cast. And let's be reminded of how silly it is to compare it to what the Jets have now. Even though the Jets are bad, I understand. 2018 Jets roster. This should be scrubbed from the internet. This should be in the Epstein files, and it should be redacted immediately. Look at this. All right. Okay. So let's start with the offensive line. Okay. Kelvin Beachum. Who's better, Kelvin Beachum or Olu Fashanu? Olu Fashanu. All right, let's keep track here. Okay, 1 for 1 on upgrades. That's one upgrade. Left guard, James Carpenter. Who's better, James Carpenter or Simpson? They're probably a similar mold of player. I will still say Simpson is better though. Center, Spencer Long or Myers. Right guard, Brian Winters or Titman. Right tackle, Shell or Membu. All 5 offensive linemen are better. Running back 1, Bilal Powell. I love Bilal Powell. He's not as good as Breece Hall. Wide receiver 1, Chosen Anderson. He's not as good as Garrett Wilson. Wide receiver 2, Quincy Enunwa. I will say Quincy, like we'll see with AD Mitchell and everything, but I would say Quincy Enunwa is better than any wide receiver 2 on the Jets when he was healthy. He was a beast. Okay. Tight end 1, Chris Herndon. Mason Taylor is better than Chris Herndon. Offensive coordinator. Who was it? Was this still Dowell Loggins, a combination of him and Gase? I mean, God. So that's of the 9 starters, or the 10 starters who are non-quarterbacks, 9 of the 10 are better on this current Jets team. And I don't think, what was really up for debate? Maybe Carpenter or Simpson. Even if you want to give Carpenter the nod because it's close, it's still 8 out of 10 are better. And that's what it is right now. That's not what it should be opening day. Because let's say you trade up and you spend the Colts pick. The Colts pick should be the bulk of it. If the Giants want to trade out, if they have the number 2 pick and they want to trade out, say we'll give you a pick swap and you can have this Colts pick and then a sweetener. And if they say no, then you go right into 2027 and you don't think twice. Is that a low ball on the draft chart? Sure, but whatever. The Jets don't have to be operating at a point of desperation. But let's say they can make that Colts pick the bulk of it, the bulk of the price. Then that means you still have 2 second-round picks. Take a receiver. Take Ian Strong or Jeremy Bernard. Take a wide receiver 2. If you can't draft a wide receiver 2 at pick 36 or whatever, you're not going to make it. Then you suck anyway as a team. That's like almost a late first-round pick. So, and then sign a veteran, maybe sign another veteran tight end who can catch a little bit. So you have an offensive line. You have Garrett Wilson. Let's call it a second-round wide receiver 2. Mason Taylor, AD Mitchell, Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis, whatever, John Mechie, random vet tight end signing. Again, I'm not saying that's the best offense a team has ever seen, but that would be better. That would be a better skill. I just created, just hypothetically, with just adding 2 pass catchers. Guys, that's a better offensive personnel than the Bills and the Patriots have. It's at least on par. Like, do we think that the Bills and the Patriots are way better than the Jets because they have Keon Coleman and Kayshon Boutte instead of Garrett Wilson? Do we think it's because they have Dalton Kincaid instead of Mason Taylor? Or Travion Henderson instead of Breece Hall? That is not why they're better. If you took the Patriots and the Jets and you switched their coaching staff and their quarterback, the Patriots would not be in the playoffs. So I get it. It's such a catch 22 because you need a minimum threshold of supporting stuff to have a QB have a chance, but you need the QB to elevate the supporting cast, right? So looks like Bo Nix. Yeah, I don't know how good Bo Nix is. It's tough to say. You don't want to punish a guy for having a good coach, but it's tough to say how much is Bo Nix versus Sean Payton. Yes, Spencer Long. Our offensive talent is very good, sans the QB. I don't know if it's very good because they definitely need like two more pass catchers, but the things that are the hardest things to find from a personnel perspective that a quarterback needs to have a shot, offensive tackles. I know offensive line in general, but it's the tackles are very hard to find. Interior offensive linemen, you can get one in free agency. You have to overpay a bit, but you can get one. Like a franchise tackle doesn't ever make it to free agency. Um, a center, like even Myers, he's a mid center you can get for $6 million. Like you're not getting a mid tackle for $6 million. And draft wise, much easier to find interior offensive linemen outside of round one and round two. So they have bookend tackles and they have Garrett Wilson who's a wide receiver one. Those are things that are really hard to find. They're already there. Like I guess tell me this. What good QB and coach combo who like we know they're good. We know you two are good. Whatever. Dan Campbell and Jared Goff. Not even Reed and Mahomes in their, a few years ago when they were breaking records, dynasty. Dan Campbell, Jared Goff. You give them Olu Fashanu, Joe Tippmann, John Simpson, Josh Myers, Armand Membu, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, Mason Taylor, A.D. Mitchell, second round receiver, Ian Strong, veteran tight end, Noah Fant to go with Mason Taylor and Jeremy Ruckert, Isaiah Davis. You think Dan Campbell and Jared Goff couldn't have a functioning offense with that? Of course they could. Would it be as good as with Gibbs and Jameson on top of Amon Ra? No, it wouldn't be as good. Wouldn't be as good. But they could have a capable offense with that supporting cast. So I think it is going to be very unlikely that if the Jets take a quarterback and they fail, that it is going to be like the offensive personnel as the deciding factor. Most likely, it's going to be you took a kid who just couldn't play because that happens. Like Jimmy Clausen couldn't play, Josh Rosen couldn't play, Johnny Manziel, Jamarcus Russell, Zach Wilson. These guys could not play. Trey Lance, they could not play. It happens. Or you just didn't have the right coach. Again, I just think it's like, oh my gosh, you know what? It's 6 years later. Aaron Glenn and Tanner Engstrand are lighting the world on fire in different places. And Fernando Mendoza was traded up for by the Jets, and now he's gone, and now he's having success. He's in an NFC title game, putting up all pro stats. And the Jets, so they had the coach, they had a QB, they had a really good offensive line, they had Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall and Mason Taylor. But John Mechie, man. It was John Mechie and Isaiah Davis. They just weren't good enough. They weren't good enough. And that's why it all fell apart. That's never been a thing in NFL history. There's not one example we could think of that because every example of a quarterback that we now know is capable, like Sam Darnold, we know is capable. I still worry about like him. He almost had the ghost game. He still looks like he could implode at any minute, but he's a capable starting quarterback, right? Whatever. Baker, who had that resurgence, all of them you could trace back to had major liabilities at either coaching or offensive line. And probably not a receiver as good as Garrett Wilson. No, I'm saying you should upgrade over John Mechie. Upgrade over Isaiah. Of course you should. You should do what the Bears did and have like leave no doubt with an abundance of offensive talent. That should be your goal. That should be your goal within reason with the resources that you have. But again, the idea is like, you know what? We were so close, but Jeremy Ruckert at tight end 2 and John Mechie at receiver 4, it just wasn't good. Offensive line was there. The quarterback was good. The coaching was good. Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall were top 10 at their positions. But damn it, John Mechie ruined our quarterback. Never been a thing. No quarterback has ever been ruined by John Mechie in NFL history or any John Mechie variant. That's not real. That's not real. It's made up. What's up, Jake? Appreciate it, man. You don't want Kyler in the QB room, period. So now, again, I have many simple rules for quarterbacks. One of them is ideally I would like you to not be smaller than me, which is like the Bryce Youngs, Kyler Murray's. Okay. Because I'm not like a giant guy either. I'm like a regular sized dude. So if I'm bigger than you, that's an issue. Okay. So Fernando Mendoza, Dante Moore, they don't have that issue. So they're already clearing that threshold. Kyler Murray shrinks every year. Every year he's an inch shorter. He's like 5'5". It's insane. Now here's the thing. I wouldn't even want the Jets to consider trading for Kyler Murray because stacking his money on top of Aaron Rodgers' money, on top of Justin Fields' money, and then he'd be here like 1 year and you'd have dead money next to him. We'd have like the most expensive quarterback in the room in the league to have like the 23rd best quarterback. That was the whole reason why I think as a business decision, moving on from Aaron Rodgers made sense because a team that's like this has no business. I think it would have been like an extra $37 million to pay for a team that's starting a rebuild to have like the 21st or 22nd best quarterback in the league. That didn't make any sense. Unfortunately, the Jets completely undid the financial benefit of moving on from Rodgers by giving Justin Fields $30 million. Completely undid it. So let's not do that again, right? Because the bridge, who the bridge is, and this is what a bridge quarterback means. It means you're not making the playoffs. That's the translation for bridge QB. Bridge. Where's the bridge? To Terabithia, nobody knows. The bridge means not to the playoffs. The bridge can go a lot of places. The playoffs is not one of them. So if you're not making the playoffs, I mean, who cares? Now I get it. I'm not saying you want Tim Boyle. Okay, you want to at least have something that could be somewhat watchable and your receivers have a chance to catch passes and you can try to evaluate stuff a little bit. I get that. But what flavor or bridge you have, it doesn't matter because you're not making the playoffs. So the Jets should just try and do it with the cheapest possible option. Cheapest possible option. That's what I trade for Mac Jones. No. 3rd round pick for Mac Jones. Why not just donate it to charity? No, I'm serious. Why not take that 3rd round pick and find a good, honest charity and just give it to them if we're going to trade a 3rd round pick for Mac Jones? Because a lot of times with this team, it's not about knowing ball. It's about knowing Jets. And if you know Jets, you know, and I know that Mac Jones would suck ass on the New York Jets. He would. How do I know? Well, once he has the scheme and he can run the offense, Tanner Engstrom can. No, don't care. I know Mac Jones would suck on the Jets. It's like he sucked on the Jaguars and he sucked mostly on the Patriots. So no, we're not doing that. Just sign Marcus Mariota. It's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. You don't need to. The Jets should invest the least amount of resources at quarterback to get like the minimum effective dose to get a guy who can hit a pass should be the plan. Kyler Murray can win one more game than Mariota. Don't care. Mac Jones, he's a bag of milk. I don't want to spend a 3rd round pick on a bag of milk. He would be terrible. This is like, do you remember, if you're a Knicks fan, you will probably recall when in Mike D'Antoni's offense, Raymond Felton had 1 year where he averaged like 17 and 8 and he was like, had like top 5 point guard stats in the league. That's what Mac Jones is doing right now. You want to trade? Should we trade a 3rd round pick from Raymond Felton too? Should he come play quarterback for the Jets? No. So the minimum effective dose that you can get for a guy who can look in the direction of a receiver and hit a pass, and you're not going to make the playoffs anyway, that should be the plan. So it's probably Marcus Mariota. That's probably what it's going to be until they actually do the thing to get a quarterback that matters. Because all the quarterbacks that matter, 90% of them are drafted in the first round. So I guess it's like, I don't know. I guess it's going to be some sort of Marcus Mariota variant. Now Kyler, if he's cut, he would be probably the best free agent quarterback. And if he could be signed for similar money to a Marcus Mariota and you want to go for him, sure. But the market's crazy. Like he'll probably get a deal that Fields got. Why wouldn't he? Murray's better than Fields. Murray's been a quarterback on a team that's made the playoff. So some team might give Kyler Murray $20 million for a year, and I would prefer it not be the Jets. Because what's the point? Didn't Geno Smith have Todd Bowles and both are gone or both is succeeding? Well, that's Geno Smith's fault for not paying his bill and getting his jaw broken because he was about to walk into the last situation that was conducive to a quarterback success on the Jets was the 2015 team. He was about to have a team with a middle line with 1,000-yard back and 2,000-yard receivers, and he got his jaw broken. And instead, Ryan Fitzpatrick had the 31 touchdown season. It could have been him. It could have been Geno. Geno could have stepped in, and then his whole career trajectory could have been different if he got to play on that team. Because in the next year, they all went to hell and they sucked. So that was his shot. And he got punched by IK and Impali or whatever in the jaw. But yeah, you are right. They did both find their success elsewhere. Don't get punched in the jaw, Fernando Mendoza. Sam Howell Bridge. That's fine by me because he sounds cheap. Right? And Sam Howell will give you that Jameis Winston year where Sam Howell could throw for like 4,300 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 20 picks. Okay. That's better than a day 2 pick for Mac Jones. I think it was Jonathan Vilma on a broadcast said the Jets should trade a first round pick for Mac Jones. That's insane. Yeah, and Mac Jones hurts people on purpose. He's like that. What's that basketball player that played for Duke? Grayson? Something Grayson, right? That's who he's like. I take Willis. Malik Willis is an interesting mystery, but I know everyone likes Tanner McKee. Sure. I would try Tanner McKee if he's cheap because at least there's an unknown element. Simple Eat says it's very possible we as a fan base have a huge part in the QB and coach never working out for us. This fan base has absolutely no patience. Should we have kept Geno and Bowles? No, but something. Yeah, I mean, dude, I don't know, man. It's tough because there's not really anything else to compare it to. Because no other fan base has the drought that we have. The closest thing I can compare it to is now I'll say this about the Jets. Jet fans, where a lot of fan bases would like withdraw and become apathetic. We become like feral, kind of toxic, and then also we withdraw. But we hang around and we like, some of we yeah, I get it. There are miserable people who like there's a small percentage of people who like when the Jets are bad, so they complain about it. Fine. I think that's a very small percentage. And I think that Woody Johnson is lucky that people show up to his product at all. He's lucky that anyone buys his product at all. He is. He's lucky that people watch the Jets and pay Sunday ticket and have season tickets and buy their kids' jerseys or watch their one Jets. He's lucky that anybody is doing that because it's been 15 years of crap. And I just don't know. There's no fan base you could point to where like, hey, they're handling 15 years really well. There's no, in fact, I could point to a lot of fan bases like the Steelers fans are done with Tomlin, which we can argue whether or not that's correct or not. But dude, he literally never has a losing season. That would be amazing to us. My Bills friends and family, every other week they want to fire McDermott and Bean. And maybe they should because maybe they'll never win them a Super Bowl, but they've still won the second most games in the NFL like the last 5 years. They've done more winning than anybody besides the Chiefs. Um, so I don't know, man. I don't know if Jet fans are impatient too. And there's always the yeah. So someone sent me an email about how there was a very long-winded email telling you get any even the smallest platform like this YouTube channel, whatever, 12K subs, whatever it is, small corner of the internet. You get some weirdos who reach out to you with some weird stuff, man. This one guy always used to I had to mute him. Like I didn't block him because I'm like, I don't think you're being malicious. This one guy would always comment about how he liked my hair. Like, look at that head of hair. And I'm just like, all right, I'm just gonna put a hat on. I just I muted him so he could still like I think he could still type, but like nobody could see it. I just didn't want to see anymore. It was like, and he clearly had notifications on because the first comment on any video would be like, look at that head of hair. And I'm like, all right, man. Like, after the third, fourth time, like this can't be happening anymore. But yeah, this one guy sent me along with an email about how like Jet fans don't deserve anything, and like it was after the Sauce trade. Like people were like, oh yeah, that makes like, how could Jet fans turn their back on Sauce? We don't deserve this. We don't deserve that. As and I responded and I said, hey man, so are you the only innocent guy at Shawshank? Really? You're the only one. Remember that one guy in Shawshank Redemption who he didn't do it. Everyone else admitted it. Like, yeah, I murdered someone. I robbed that guy or whatever. The one guy, he was the only innocent one. He maintained. So if you think you're the only innocent one at Shawshank, I don't know. He might be a narcissist, but that's on that guy. That's on that guy, I guess, because I think Jeff fans, for the most part, Woody Johnson is lucky that his organization has any people who are willing to spend money on it. It just is what it is. But I hope that guy's doing well. I hope he's recovered from the Sauce trade. He was very broken down about it. And he wrote that email at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I hope that guy is doing well. I truly hope it's turned around for him. Yeah, Grayson Allen. Screw that guy. Yeah, it's the hair. Now it's like hat hair. I feel like maybe I have a mini. See, I just don't want to ever go bald. It'll probably go. I got some grays though. Got some grays coming in. And that's fine. It's like my dad, by the time he was like my age, it was all white. It was kind of like a badass look because my dad's Puerto Rican, so he's got like dark skin and white hair was a look for him. I think I'm a little too pale, but for right now, it's holding on. But I do have some grays coming, and I'm getting old. Normal average hair. See, this is a normal comment. Well, now see, we just wait. This is hat hair. I have to. Maybe it was a day where I had like I conditioned well, according to that guy. I had great hair. I need a haircut, actually. By the way, I was like, "That's what it feels like as like a woman when someone's maybe commenting on your appearance. And you don't really like it." I'm like, I could see how that would be upsetting because I'm like, this is not good. Anyway, okay, yeah, Dylan Terman, Puerto Rican and Irish bloodlines, so I'm well equipped to drink alcohol. That's for sure. That's never been a problem. I could hold it pretty well. As someone who spent a couple of years locked up, everyone is innocent in there. See? Even you happy. Were you innocent? I bet you were. I bet you were framed. Take zinc and then 4 hours later, 2 milligrams of copper and the grays will go away. All right. See, this is how I always knew this is why you liked Aaron Rodgers. That is that's a Joe Rogan that's prescription right there. It probably works though. You know what it was? I remember I think it was magnesium. There was a time where I was like having trouble sleeping and somebody said magnesium, bro. And I did it and it worked. And all the doctor wanted to do was like give me a sleeping pill. I just took some like magnesium in a packet, like mixed in with water. And like 3 days later, I was sleeping like a baby. But the thing is, you don't get a nice kickback on a patented drug for magnesium. Solutions that are, you know, cheap and readily abundant, people don't make a lot of money on those. You need a Zang's-Lava's Blabba plan. You need that to sleep. Does it cause anal leakage and death? Yes, but that's part of it. You want to sleep or not? Come on. I'll give it to you right now. Ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is excellent for sleeping. Oh, is that her name? She sounds nice. Holistic. All right, you guys are there's a bunch of stoners. That's cool though. Yes, magnesium glycinate. That's what it was called. That's exactly what it was called. Don't wear hats as much if you don't want to go bald. Is that real? Really? All right. I'll loosen it up. I guess that would make sense. Is it like the friction or is it I don't know. Yeah, my favorite part of drug commercials is when they say at the end, they're like, some deaths have occurred. Some deaths have occurred. What? That's it? Just, sometimes people take this and they die. It is what it is. Some deaths have occurred. Okay. That's part of it. Some deaths. Weednesium works well for sleep. Yeah, but then I'm sure maybe they've toned in now that it's legal, they can probably be more strategic with how they make the plants, but I mean, I haven't smoked in years, but I remember like it would be a good night's sleep, but it was tough to get out of the, the bed. The next day was not going to be great, but maybe they've improved. No, as you get older, like being sober is definitely like fine. Like just being regular is fine. A little caffeine, that's about it. It is crazy though how more like socially acceptable it is to just get hammered as opposed to be like being stoned. Because if you go to a football game and it's like some 55-year-old guy who has like a daughter in college, like a fully grown adult, is just belligerent, like puking, his shirt's off. He like tried to fight a guy, and it's just like, yeah, it's just part of it. Like it's an insane. If you had no context to that, like if you weren't desensitized to it, you're like, what made him do that? And he's like, oh, he just had like 14 Labats, and it's like, oh, should we make it so people can't do that? It's like, no, what do you mean? Of course they have to. It's part of the game. It's part of it. Like if alcohol didn't exist yet and someone just made it and people started drinking it and doing what they do, you'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this has to be banned immediately." But but if you smoke, it's like you're like a loser. It's like I don't know, man. I never seen somebody never seen somebody do that because they smoked a joint. Now I don't do either, but well, I don't do either excessively, but yeah, it's kind of crazy how those two things are viewed. Yeah, I will say since it's become legal, I don't love smelling weed everywhere, to be honest. Uh, don't love it, but it is what it is, not to be a Karen. It's yeah, half Puerto Rican. Um, yeah, so I have a twin sister and she looks fully Puerto Rican. So she got all of the Puerto Rican genes. Even when we were babies, like our skin complexion was completely different from when we were born. So I got I guess, more Irish, and she got more Puerto Rican. Because you look at her, you'd be like, "Yeah, she's Puerto Rican." You look at me, you're like, "Yeah, it's just a white guy." Oh yeah, so unfortunately, the Jets are also working out kickers, and I think maybe it's nothing, but I think looking at so I'm putting a couple pieces of information together. So they offered Myers a contract. They offered Ruckert a contract extension. Now they're working on all these kickers. I think maybe there's a chance that they came to Nick Folk and said, "Hey, man, we want to extend you for next year. Let's get that out of the way." And maybe he indicated to them that he's going to retire. That's kind of what I see with them bringing in all those kickers to try and stash one, get ahead of it for next year, which would suck. Like, come on, we get a historic kicker for a tank year, and then he leaves us. Come on, Nick. All you got to do is swing that right leg, man. Give him another 3 million. You know what's interesting? It'll be interesting to see like what does it cost to retain? What does it cost to bring back Isaiah Williams? How much money does a guy who is going to return like 5 punts for touchdowns and has shown like some ability to be a depth receiver? Like, what's the market for that guy? Because you got to bring him back, right? Yeah, Isaiah Williams is our best player. He probably is. If we're being honest, of like who just does their job the best on the Jets, it's probably like Nick Folk, Austin McNamara, Isaiah Williams, top three. Stand up. Actually, I did do. I have done a couple of open mic nights, but no stand up. Stand up is hard to be not bad at. That's a tough because I've We used to go to open mic night, and that would be you'd sit through some ones that's, like, really bad. That's a tough one if you're bad. Look at the thicker kicker, yeah, is he still I think someone picked him up. Yeah, the Zerline effect, yeah, that would be terrible because Zerline did have a great season for us that one I think 2 years, right? 2 year wasn't he good for us for 2 years and then he crapped the bed the 3rd year, if I recall. But I'll leave it there, appreciate you guys hanging out. If you wanna hit the thumbs up on your way out, that'd be cool, and go Jets.